Bro!
What?
You know that scienceisdope guy, right?
Yeah, he's good. I like him.
Yeah, he's made a video on Zakir Naik this time.
Oh, good. That guy is some next level when it comes to pseudoscience.
Don't you get it? He's doing this to make the Hindus happy. He's actually pretty anti-Hindu.
But hasn't he clarified that he's not anti-Hindu?
He only did that because otherwise he knows we'll go to his channel and hit that dislike button. Yep, that's why he's making the Zakir Naik video.
Okay, so let me get this straight. If he makes a video, that's a problem. If he doesn't make a video, that's a problem. So what should he do?
I don't know, it's not my problem.
Are you at least gonna watch the video?
No. Hi, my name's Pranav, you're watching scienceisdope. Dr. Zakir Naik, he's very popular, I'm sure all of you know him. He's a famous Muslim televangelist who holds huge talks where he logically tells everyone why Islam is superior to other religions.
Anyone proves to me logically, scientifically, any other religion better than Islam, I am ready to accept it.
In fact, his confidence in Islam is so much that he issues a debate challenge to literally everyone.
Arrange for a dialogue, I will debate him. You arrange, I will debate him.
If you want to have a lecture,
Yes.
sure. If you want to have a debate also, we can arrange.
Can you?
You
Okay.
can come to
All
Monday.
right.
But if they accept, he finds convenient reasons to back out.
I personally do not debate with women. You send me the number one doctor of divinity in Gambia.
And he doesn't forget to remind you that he's a medical doctor. And so everything he's saying has to be right. One of the things he often does in his endorsement of Islam is if something doesn't agree with Islam, then according to him, that thing is wrong and Islam is right. And evolution happens to be one such thing. Now, there's this super famous video, I'll link it down below, where he explains to an ex-Muslim how evolution is just a theory. Let's take a look at it because I think there's a lot to learn here. A lot of things that our schools don't really teach all that well, like what's a theory, what's a fact, is evolution a theory or a fact, and is Zakir Naik right or not? Spoiler alert, he's not.
What is the stance of Islam on evolution?
As far as the question on theory of evolution is come, there is no book so far that I have read which talks about fact of evolution. Theory of evolution means a theory.
There is a logical fallacy here called equivocation. When a word has two meanings and you use it in the wrong meaning to support your argument, that's equivocation fallacy. What's the word here? That's right, theory. Now, in common language, a theory is used to mean a guess.
Ew, why do these birds always choose me to crap on?
I have a theory. Maybe it's because you look like an actual toilet. This is not what a scientific theory means. In science, a theory is part of the scientific method, and the scientific method is a way of analyzing and understanding the world. This is how it works. Suppose you observe something, like some things float in water and some things sink. You try to explain what you're observing by making a guess. We call this a hypothesis. Your hypothesis is that light things float in water and heavy things sink. Okay, great. This explains our first observation well, but you're not sure if it's true, so you decide to test it and drop something heavy in water, like a tree. Hey, it floats. You were wrong, but you've learned a new fact by observing. So back to the drawing board again. We have to come up with a new guess. Okay, so we've seen that something heavy like a tree floats, but something light like a coin sinks. So maybe it's because metallic things sink, and if they're not metallic, they float. That's your new hypothesis. So now you test this, make observations. Hey, there are massive ships made of metal that float on water. So your new hypothesis can't be right. Back to the drawing board again. How about things that are denser than water sink in water, and if they're not denser, they'll float in water? That sounds good. You make observations. Coins sink because they're denser than water. A tree floats because it's not denser than water. And a metal ship floats on water because it has air cavities inside it, so the overall density of the entire ship is less than that of water. Hey, this explanation seems to work, but you're not completely sure if it's true yet, so you keep testing it. And every time it passes the test, your confidence in your idea keeps improving. You now have a theory. You can tell the whole world about it. And you now have an explanation for everything you've seen, and you can predict if you drop something in water, will it float or will it sink? Okay, so what have we learned? Your observations or facts are guaranteed to be true. Your theories, however, are not. But they only become theories once they've been tested so many times that our confidence in them is extremely high. But we always keep in the back of our minds that someone somewhere will come forward with evidence that your theory cannot explain, at which point you will have to modify your theory. For example, so if you know why that razor blade, which is definitely denser than water, is floating in water, then put it down in the comments. The rest of you, check out the comments. Okay, so I went into so much detail here because this topic is going to come up again later, much later in the video. I've also linked below a source that tells you all about this just a theory argument in the context of evolution. Now that you understand what a theory is and what a fact is, let's get back to our main man, Zakir Naik.
There is no book so far that I've read which talks about fact of evolution. Theory of evolution means a theory.
Is evolution an observed fact? Yes, and I can give you many examples of this. If you take the flu shot, within the next year you'll have to take it again. This is because the virus would have changed, would have evolved enough to be able to evade the vaccine. It's the same reason why there's no cure to the common cold. It's the reason why we have antibiotic resistant bacteria. The ones that survive despite use of the antibiotics are the ones that get to pass on their genes to the next generation. And the survivors of that generation pass on their survival genes, or the genes that help them survive, to the next generation. And this process repeats until we have bacteria that are extremely resilient to antibiotics. Now, can evolution be observed in large animals like dogs? Yes, the different breeds of dog are a result of evolution. These two dogs haven't evolved so much that they are no longer the same species, but over generations, their line of ancestors have been artificially separated by humans, and this accumulation of separate physical traits led to them appearing very different today. So evolution, living things changing their form slowly over several generations, is a fact. So what is this theory of evolution?
When we talk about theory of evolution, we start thinking of Charles Darwin.
To explain this fact of evolution, Charles Darwin proposed a mechanism for it. He called it the theory of evolution by natural selection. It's simple. Those individuals that have the traits necessary to help them survive, to compete in their environment, like say physical strength, speed, or something as simple as being the right color can be helpful to survival. Those traits, they'll survive and pass on those traits to the next generation. And the survivors of that generation pass on their helpful traits to the next generation. So over thousands of generations, these traits get accumulated in the descendants, and that leads to them changing or evolving over thousands of generations. In fact, what I explained earlier about bacteria becoming more resistant to antibiotics is a result of natural selection. And the dog breeds that we have today is a result of not natural selection but artificial selection by humans. So, fact of evolution, theory of evolution by natural selection. So, why don't books call it the fact of evolution then? I think it's because using the word fact like that outside an argument like this becomes very redundant. I'll give an example. So objects that are dropped fall. That's a fact. Everyone knows that. But you don't call it the fact of falling, do you? Same thing.
Thinking of Charles Darwin. He wrote a book called The Origin of Species. And in that book, he says that he went on a ship by the name of HMS Beagle, and he went on an island by the name of Calotropis.
The island is called Galapagos, not Calotropis. He makes the same error every single time he talks about evolution.
which went on an island by the name of Calotropis.
Charles Darwin went on an island by the name of Calotropis.
He goes to an island by the name of Calotropis.
It's almost like he's rehearsed and practiced this answer very well, and while rehearsing, he's learned up all these mistakes as well. Because you can see him repeating the same mistakes over and over again every time he talks about this.
And there he saw birds pecking in niches. Now, depending upon the niches, the holes they pecked.
The word niche, the way Darwin used it, refers to the role an organism plays in its environment. So he's wrong here. I'll give you an example. The niche of a large herbivore is in Africa, it's filled by the elephant, and in North America by the bison, and in Australia by the red kangaroo. Now, a niche can be very specific also, like in the case of these birds, these finches. Depending upon the niche they occupied by the type of food they ate, some birds, some of these finches had long thin beaks suitable for catching insects, and some had large powerful beaks suitable for cracking open nuts, etc. And this observation led Darwin to study why this variation occurred, and he was able to show that the environment naturally selected those traits that enabled survival.
And there he saw birds pecking in niches. Now, depending upon the niches, the holes they pecked, the beak became short and long. Based on this observation, he propounded his theory of evolution. He propounded a natural selection.
So I've shown you how what he's saying is wrong, but other than that, what he's doing is a straw man fallacy. He's misrepresenting what Darwin actually said. The way he's saying it, it'll appear very silly to someone who's hearing this for the first time. I'll link another source down below that addresses all these misconceptions that Zakir Naik has made in the video so far, and everything he's gonna say as the video goes on.
Charles Darwin, he wrote a letter to his friend Thomas Thompson in the 19th century, and he said that I do not have proof as far as my theory of evolution is concerned. There are missing links.
I have a problem with people using the word proof in a science context. In common language, it's something I see a lot. I see people saying something like scientific proof,
where unless there's a Western scientific proof about something, people just don't buy it anymore.
I guess I'm okay with it as long as people understand this. You don't prove things in science like you do in math. You find evidence in support of an idea. Newton's laws can't be proven. Einstein's relativity can't be proven. Darwin's natural selection cannot be proven. But we trust them because they have a lot of evidence in support. Now, I know that this may be a little confusing, this difference between proof and evidence. I'll make a separate video about it because I don't want to go too deep here. This video is already pretty long. So if enough people ask me in the comments, I'll make a separate video about this. What Zakir Naik probably should have said is Darwin didn't have enough evidence for his idea, which was true at that time. But what he doesn't tell us is that Darwin only published the book on the origin of species some 20 years after these initial observations, during which time he made a lot more observations in animal breeding, especially artificial selection. The entire book written by Darwin is available online for free. I'll link it below.
Now, in most of the schools, they teach Darwin theory as though it's a fact because they don't have any alternative.
This is one of the stupidest statements in the entire video. Schools don't teach students something because there is no alternative. They teach students the established results of science, and this actually is a part of the scientific method. Apart from communicating your theories to the rest of the world, you also teach the next generation what you've learned. And why are you acting like there are no alternatives to evolution? According to you, Islamic creation is an alternative to evolution, right? Or how about the myth of creation in Christianity? I'll tell you why they don't teach those. Because it's not possible to leave your brain outside the class before you enter.
But as far as recent times are concerned, most of the scientists today they do not agree with Darwin's theory.
Not because Darwin was wrong, but because his theory was incomplete. Darwin only gave one mechanism for variation among species, that is natural selection. There are more that we know today, like mutation, geographical isolation, genetic drift, etc. The latest theory we have on evolution is called modern synthesis or neo-Darwinism. That's right, it's named after Darwin, the person who first got the ball rolling.
If there was evolution today, we should be having some people who are in between monkeys and human beings. You don't find that in any museum.
This is perhaps the greatest misconception there is about evolution. Human beings and apes and monkeys don't have a relationship like monkeys evolved into apes and those then evolved into human beings. The transition is not between animals that exist today, but rather the transition is between the fossils of animals that existed in the past and the animals that are present today. I'll provide two sources down below. One showing how humans transition from their hominid ancestors, and another showing fossilized bones of the fins of fishes transitioning into the bones of a human arm.
Even according to molecular biology, according to the specialist of molecular biology, they say it is absurd to think that our DNA of the human beings have been evolved from ape. It's not possible at all.
I'm glad you brought up molecular biology, Zakir Naik, because I'm sure you would be aware of the Human Genome Project, which sequenced our entire DNA. There's also a chimpanzee genome project that did the same with the chimpanzee. And we know today that humans and chimpanzees share about 98% of their genetic material. We know conclusively that both species descended from the same ancestor species that lived about 6 million years back. I guess the molecular biologist forgot to mention this too. So he says all this expecting the person who asked the question to be convinced, and we get this priceless conversation.
And that's what the Quran says, that we believe in the theory of creation, not in the theory of evolution. Or rather, I should say the fact of creation. Hope that answers the question, brother.
No.
So where was the question? What did you not understand?
What you say, it is true. It was true. 150 years ago, it was true. It's not Darwin's theory anymore. 150 years worth of research with the latest scientific advancements, that it's not what you're saying. When my professor shows me proof, it's not just from apes, which is completely certain. When you see proof how the common cold evolves, when it changes its own morphology, it's evolving its defense mechanisms against today's latest vaccine.
Brother,
that's evolution right there.
Let me tell you one thing.
It's not Darwin's theory anymore.
Let me tell you one thing, brother. I am a medical doctor.
He is a medical doctor, guys. Do not mess with him.
And there are many researches being done. If it turns out to be a fact, it has to come in the medical college.
It is in the medical college. I'm taught this in university.
By the basic you saying theory of evolution, it means it's an hypothesis.
No.
It is not yet a thought. It's not yet a fact.
There's a difference between hypothesis and theory. A theory is something in science that has the highest honor. When something gains the word theory, it's fact. The theory, in theoretical terms, it's the theory of gravity, but we don't say it, we just say it fact. Same way we say the fact of gravity.
Sorry, what did you say? Theory of what?
Gravity. If you say it in theoretical terms, but it's
no theory of gravity. It's a law of gravity. I'm sorry.
Law.
I'm sorry.
It's the law of evolution.
I'm sorry. Your knowledge of science is very weak. It is Boyle's law. It is not Boyle's theory. It is Archimedes' principles. It's not Archimedes' theory. Whatever's theory, when it becomes a fact, it changes into law.
So there's a lot of confusion here. Theories don't become laws, which then become fact. Laws are like theories, but with a mathematical expression that tells you what the theory is saying. You can use this mathematical expression to predict what's going to happen. Now, why is it called the general theory of relativity, even though it has a mathematical expression? Shouldn't it be called a law? I don't know. These definitions of theories and laws are not super consistent everywhere. They follow this general rule, but you can always find exceptions. Which is why I prefer to use this one single word instead of all of them. This one single word, model. Newton's gravity model, Einstein's relativity model, Darwin's natural selection model, etc. So there are observations of facts and then there are models. Models help us paint a picture of reality based on our understanding. And facts are like pieces of that reality that help us refine our models over and over again and improve our understanding. Once you understand how they play a role in the scientific method, it becomes very easy for you to understand how science actually works. I want to make a whole video dedicated to this topic and make it so easy to understand that literally anyone can understand it. But that video will come soon. I'm working on it. Now let's get back to Zakir Naik.
Okay, just
The thing is that if your knowledge is so weak, you're saying theory is the highest thing in science. I'm sorry, you're absurd. I'm a medical doctor. Theory is the highest thing in science. I'm very sorry, brother.
If someone
I'm
can
Jahangir,
disprove,
brother. I'm very sorry. Theory is never the highest thing in science.
He accuses the person of not understanding science based on one error and refuses to continue the conversation. What a cop-out. The actual reason is that Zakir Naik knows that he can't convince the other person, and so rather than continue the conversation and expose his own misunderstandings of evolution, he'd rather just not continue. Zakir Naik is a perfect example of why you shouldn't form your conclusions before looking at the real world. Because you will end up looking for evidence that confirms your belief and disregard evidence that goes against your belief. Just like Zakir Naik here is disregarding evolution. This is called confirmation bias, probably one of the biggest biases that comes in the way of people thinking clearly. What you have to do is look at the evidence first and then form your conclusions. Hope you've learned something in this video. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, remember, science is dope.